Thank you for being here. And if you wouldn't mind modeling for folks who come on, I say here, please put it in the chat, your ID, meaning your name, your community or synagogue, and your state. Has anybody run a Decarbonizers program in their synagogue before? I'm not waiting for show of hands there. I don't think so. So we need to get a lot of people doing this program. So a lot of what we'll do today is talking about empowerment so that you feel empowered to do this. You'll see what this is in a moment. Welcome, welcome, welcome. This is exciting. Big Bold Jewish Climate Fest this week involves a lot of programming. We really appreciate that you're stepping into this one, which is put on by JCAN of Massachusetts. We've got a batch of programs going on this week. So I hope you'll be interested in attending a number of these, you and or your co-congregants, people in your community. Jewish Climate Action Network is proud to be part of the Hazon Big Bold Jewish Climate Fest. I'm Fred Davis, and I'll be running this program. Thank you very much for being here. If you would like to make a donation to Jewish Climate Action Network so we can keep doing the work that we do, it's an all-volunteer organization, but we do have expenses, it would be appreciated. So the program today has to do with you and your fellow congregants. These are your fellow congregants. Okay, so look at them, picture your fellow congregants. Then we go to the next slide. Keep them in your head. You know, you've got a few faces and folks you can think of, right? Keep them in your head for a moment. They fall into one of these categories. I use the present tense because they could already have adopted, whoops, sorry.
Unknown caller.
They could have already adopted a decarbonizing step, and we'll get into what that means. But if they haven't yet, they will. And how do we know this? Because we are a faith community. We have faith. Decarbonization is the path that we need to be on for climate. It has to happen. It is happening already. And if you're not speaking, if you could keep yourself muted, that'd be great. And here's a clue. Maybe we're somewhere in this vicinity, maybe further to the left, maybe further to the right, but we need to ramp up that slope. We must accelerate. And just to remind you, this is what's called an adoption curve, And it means that for so many, say, technologies, we are behind all this is technology, it's true. So you take the telephone went through these stages. Electric lights went through these stages. The smartphone went through these stages. It turns out that this is the nature of human change, the nature of change. It starts with a few crazies, and it ends up at the very far to the right, those who are late to the party. By the way, hope everybody can see this, and you'd speak up loudly and give me a hard time if there's any problem with the audio or the video. So it also comes down to, if not you, who you showed up. So you're the organizer, you're the activist, you're the organizer. I'm going to keep saying that. So this is here to train you to run a program called Decarbonizers, in your synagogue or your community. Now, first, who here has ever run any program in your synagogue or community? Again, if you could click the, where is it here now? The raise hand, that'd be helpful at this moment. Right, either raise your actual hand or raise the, click on the raise hand electronically. All right, a batch of you have, and a batch of you are not jumping at the opportunity to say so. That's fine, that's fine. But the question is, what are you gonna do to get a program approved, to get it on the schedule, to get approval that it can happen? And this by itself, this very question could be a whole hours-long discussion. It would be very exciting, very interesting. If we had 5 people, I'd ask for lots of kibitzing. But do people see that? I don't know. Okay, so whose permission is needed Anybody want to offer a name, a position of somebody in your congregation who you think you might have to ask? The president, the board, the rabbi. Phyllis, you're on it.
Yeah.
President, the board, the rabbi. Oh, yeah. Sounds intimidating. Okay, somebody's got an executive director and embraced by clergy, endorsed by executive committee and trustees. Wow, it sounds intimidating. All right, great. Okay, we're seeing a lot of commonality. That's great. That's good enough. Thank you. That's terrific. Okay, so what happens if you're in a position of authority? You're on the board, or you're an executive board, or you're a trustee, or you're the clergy, the rabbi, the president, whatever. If you're in a position of authority and somebody comes to you and says, I want to do this. Well, you listen as best you can if you're a good person, and you say, well, we've done this before, right? And of course you'd say no. And they say, so wait, so other people have done this before, and you'd say, yeah. But the real reason I want to do it is because Jewish Climate Action Network says it's the most important program we could possibly put on this year. But we really have to do it. And that's the kind of chutzpah that I hope you can muster and enlist the support. I invite you to enlist the support of Jewish Climate Action Network, me in particular, if you want to bring this appeal to whomever. But you do have to get this on the calendar as quickly as possible. That's the most and often the toughest step. But people have already thrown out who you have to go through. Okay, Ellen says that people who run the building and facilities and maintenance staff, yeah, it's possible. We definitely want all these people on board. It's true. But this goes back to, you want to work with the team. So either you are the person who's the schmoozer, who knows all these decision makers, knows how to get them to say yes, or you know people who are good schmoozers and can do that kind of organizing. You want to work with them as a team. That's why we emphasize green teams. And Ellen Fine here mentions the building facilities and maintenance people. Get them on the team, absolutely. And get a diverse group of people on that team. Don't just make it the people who are geeky about technology at all. This is not really about technology. This is about the world. This is about climate. Okay, so this is a large group, which I really appreciate. And if you would keep putting ideas into the chat, I may or may not be able to see them. So when we get to later in the program, I will look back at it, but I will rocket ahead. If there is something urgent, just speak up, unmute yourself, and actually speak up using actual sound. All right. So why are we doing this? Well, if not now, when? And I'm not going to get started on why climate is so urgent. And who? The who, what, why, and when. Okay. When, I suggest this be done this year, by this fall, at the latest. And who is doing it? Well, you and the rest of your team are the organizers. The who of who's the presenter, who's in the program, who's centered in the program. It's not you necessarily. It's 3 decarbonizers. And we'll talk about in a minute just who those are. And who sits in the audience? It's whoever you can rally to show up. And the how. This is all about the how. This is not about top-down education. This is not coming from experts. This is peer-to-peer motivation, which we are finding is the most effective means of progress. This is super simple. It's going to look like it's way too easy. It's super effective. The key is peer-to-peer, and I forgot to put in here, it's really fun. So I would say, I don't know, I don't want to presume it about anybody on this call, but if somebody should happen to be needing something to do, they're feeling isolated and want to be engaging with people, this is wonderful, a wonderful thing to organize, because in the process of organizing it, you have a lot of fun talking to people. There's a recipe. But first, who's a decarbonizer? What we're talking about is those who have already adopted for their own households These one or more of these three: photovoltaics, that's solar on the roof; EV, electric vehicle that they're driving; HP, heat pump, heating in the heating districts, and high efficiency heat pumps if you're in a cooling dominated region of the country. So that's who we're defining as a decarbonizer. And they're also not experts, and they're also members of your congregation. So the whole project here is to go forth, identify the right 3 people in your congregation, and put them into a program, get people to attend the program, and those decarbonizers will inspire, and you'll see why. Right, now, Naomi, we could spend a lot of time on your very good question. How does this apply to renters or seniors who no longer drive? What we need to do, everyone who shows up for any of our programs is already concerned about climate. Many are way, way, way beyond concern, to the point of, oh my goodness, what am I going to do? And some people actually have small carbon footprints. This is not an entirely democratic exercise here. Some have large carbon footprints, some have small carbon footprints. Those who have small carbon footprints, we might as well tell them and let them take a breath. Oh my goodness, like a pat on the back. Renters tend to have lower carbon footprints. People who don't drive tend to have lower carbon footprints, etc. It's okay to say congratulations and thank you. And if you'd like to do something, any of those people who already have lower carbon footprints, if you'd like to do something, show up for the green team, because we need the organizers, as you'll see right now. So that's my partial answer for that very good question. All right, so here's the recipe. We're going to learn it. It's going to seem super simple, and we'll demonstrate as we go. So it comes down to 9 steps. I'm going to repeat these 9 many times. If you have a piece of paper, that's fantastic. Jot them down. If you forget all about it, email Fred, that's me, and we will send you the recipe again, no charge. No charge. And just like recipes, if you've never done it before, you want to practice it before you put it on stage, and that's what's going to happen here. You'll see these steps involve practicing. So calendar, as I said, can be the toughest one. Get the date on the calendar. If you've got people you've got to go to and through, say, let's just put it on the calendar. We'll keep talking about whether you like it or not. You'll invite them to join the team as you put this together. Invite, as I said before, invite Fred to help make the case. Well, whatever it takes, but get it on the calendar. As soon as you get it on the calendar, again, you've got a team, so not everybody has to do, not one person has to do everything, but publicize, publicize, and publicize. Some people are very good at this. Put the date out now, say, if it's 3 months from now, whatever, say, put out something saying, save the date. That's all you need to say, and you can include the mysterious word decarbonizers. Good enough. If you, but publicize early and late. In other words, up to the day of. Say, don't forget this afternoon. Okay. Now we get into the heart of the matter. Fetch around. As you've gone forth asking to get it on the calendar, asking people to help you with publicity, talking to your team, and if you haven't got a team, you're developing a team. As you're doing that, you're saying, well, who do we know in the congregation or in the community who already has done one of these? Put solar on their roof, drives an electric car, or heats and or cools with high efficiency heat pumps. So show of hands again, I want to make sure everybody's listening. Are any of you a decarbonizer, a non-expert who's already done at least one of these? Raise hands electronically or by hand. 1, 2, 3, 4. Great. And anybody else who I can't see, if you would just click on whatever the button is that says raise hand. Might be under more. Okay, we've got somebody chatting, putting in the chat. Yes, okay, good. So a batch of you are, that's excellent, excellent, excellent. I'm gonna ask another show of hands, so take down your hands. Thank you very, very much. Take down those hands, Nancy and Phil. Okay, this is great that people are paying attention. Thank you. Next question is, other than yourself, do you know a fellow congregant or another member of your community who is one of these decarbonizers, who's already gone photovoltaics or heat pump or electric car? Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. Good. 5. Okay, excellent, excellent, excellent. Thank you very much. The exciting thing here is, to the extent that you don't know other congregants, you will find out. How do you find out? Network. How do you network? You schmooze. You talk to your friends and say, do you know anybody? And do you know anybody who might know anybody? You talk to the clergy, you talk to the rabbi, you talk to the president, the board, whatever. And Mary, where are you at? You can speak up. Mary Adlersberg says, you know many people.
Vancouver, Canada.
Vancouver is too cool for school. That's great. That's great. All right. Ellen, you say no car expert. You want to tell us what you mean there?
I think you remember giving me a ride, Fred. I don't have a car, so I'm an expert at not having a car.
Oh, nice. A no car expert. I love it. I love it.
Although I am looking to try to get a used electric, or I will be needing of a new endeavor where we will need a farm truck, but we're thinking of running it on used oil from restaurants.
Good, good, good. All right. And David Wolfson says, Ellen is a decarbonizer. Well, decarbonizer. Well, yes, I know Ellen, and she certainly is. So, but we're going to stick to the specific definition for the sake of this program. These 3 things are decarbonizers. And why are they most important? Why are they most important? It's a rhetorical with 20 people on the call. I'm not going to get into a big discussion, but because they are the single largest steps that consumers, let's just call it consumers, households can take by far. By far. There are other things that people can do, but these are the 3 big ones. Again, if you've already done them, or if you don't, it is an NA, doesn't apply to you, not apply. That's great. Go forth and organize for the sake of others who have those big carbon footprints. That's where the effort is needed. Radical decarbonization now. How's that for a rallying cry? Okay, so you're going to fetch around, network, schmooze, whatever it takes to find a pool. And don't stop at 3, by the way. Keep going or until you have quite a batch. Until you have a batch, you need at least 3. It's not absolutely necessary, but that's the goal here. But fetch around, and you want, let's say you've got 5 or 10 people who drive EV. Fantastic. You got to say to them as you're fetching, saying, you know, we're not going to include everybody, but but ask them, listen for their preliminary stories. As you're fetching, people will tend to say, you know, we just got the electric car last year and we love it, begin the kids, and you often can't stop these stories, but you start listening, jot down. This is the fun part of the putting the recipe together, listening for these stories. And make sure, as everybody you talk to, say, we're going to do this program, I want you to be there. Okay? So this is the fun part of the fetching. You're making a list of everybody you talk to. And once you've gone to, and of course you bring it back to your committee, and this is what it looks like. Of course, the reality is real. If you're driving an electric car, you're driving an electric car. Fantastic. If you heat with heat pump, and a lot of people aren't familiar with the technology, but they might have seen it before, top left there and top right and bottom right, those are all depictions of parts inside and outside of air source heat pump. Air source heat pump. Many people have seen these and not realized that's what they were seeing. The bottom left is ground source heat pump, a whole different system. It's what I did in my house just this past year, and it's less common, but it is it's fascinating. I would love to do a whole talk on that. Okay, moving on. And the 3rd category is find somebody who has photovoltaics on their roof. There's still many ideal roofs that don't have solar? Okay,
Fred, there was a comment about, is buying into solar farm count?
buying into a solar farm, of course, counts. Many things we can do to reduce carbon footprint, absolutely. And if you don't have your own roof, especially if you don't have access on a roof of your own, buying into a solar farm is fantastic. But what we're trying to do here, again, it's not a democratic process. It is an attempt to influence those who can to do these things. Not everyone can do it, and not everyone needs to do it, because some have already done other things, or have already done things, or it doesn't apply to them. Okay, so now you've got your pool, and your next step is to go back to your pool, look at your notes, think about the stories, and pick from amongst them 3 with good stories. Now, this obviously is pretty subjective, but here's your opportunity to be your, what's the word, impresario, when you're putting a program together, when you're thinking in terms of directing a play, when you're thinking in terms of making a movie, you know, and again, if you don't think you have skills in this direction, get somebody on your team and start thinking, well, who's got really interesting, or what makes their story engaging to an audience, to other people, to their fellow congregants. You won't know for sure, and this is not television, you're not producing a television show, but you want it to be Hamish, you want it to be home-like, you want people to be inspired because, hey, I could do that. That's the one thing you're most looking for. So if you heard things that made you feel that way as you listen to these stories, then put their stories into the category of, I think we want that as one of the 3. Now, any questions so far? This is now the heart of the matter. You want to go and find your ideal 3. It's not perfect, but your ideal 3. As you go back to them, you want to say, you know, I think I'd like you to participate in this program. Oh my gosh, what do I have to do? And the answer is not much. Just show up and tell the stories that you've already told me. In other words, it should not be intimidating, or you want to take the intimidation away as much as you can. And also say, we only need you for 8 minutes. People say, oh, 8 minutes. Well, what am I supposed to say? And then you draw them out. Either you've already heard their stories and you know, or you draw them out a little bit. You know, you said the kids like the car. What does that mean? What does it matter to a kid whether it's electric or gas? You know, draw them out. Maybe it's an interesting story. Who knows? The heat pump system went in. Does it make any difference? Is the spouse hot or cold? Happy or upset? Whatever the story is, elicit the stories. And what you're listening to, as I keep saying, is what's most engaging, but you're also hearing what's for any overlaps. So you don't want your 3 speakers, even though they're talking about 3 different technologies, to be the same kind of story. You don't want the same kind of person, you don't want the same kind of story. They don't have to repeat the same thing. And also, if to the extent any of them are, and I'm sorry to use this term, kind of geeky with the numbers, that would be me, by the way. If somebody approached me, I'd say, I got numbers, I can show you numbers. And you say, that's great. If you let's put it on one slide. And anyway, you help them get to one slide if you've got somebody with numbers. Any questions so far? Are people getting the idea here?
I have a question.
Please, Thea.
I'm doing this. I've been interviewing people for a decarbonizing program, and I don't find that they have very interesting stories. I need some more ideas for how to create questions to elicit interesting stories, because my mind just, I can't think of other questions to ask them.
Nice. Okay. Anybody have ideas? I've got some, but if other people want to talk, this is a good opportunity. Thank you. Thea's just going to twist in the wind here. Can anybody help her out? Naomi?
I was just wondering whether if you've got some people who have done home installations, would it be interesting to have their kids talk about it?
Nice, nice. Well, that's a good point. We definitely want to have one speaker per household, but maybe they can drag a youngster up there. At least you could say, what do your kids think? What have they said? That's a great thought. Others. Got good thinkers here. What are good questions to ask people who have an electric car or have got photovoltaics?
I like
about-
what Phyllis added to the chat.
Oh,
Talk about
thank you.
cost and the ability to take a vacation with a EV car.
Perfect.
I
Perfect.
hadn't
So
thought of that.
perfect. So here are the basics. They always come up. So I'll feed you them in case you needed them. You probably don't need them, but they always come up. With an electric car, it's, oh my goodness, the range anxiety. Oh my goodness, the range anxiety. How do you handle that? And guess what? EV drivers have answers. They have answers. They've thought about this. And how about with solar? If you live in a cold climate, what's the most asked question of if you've never experienced photovoltaics? What's the most asked question? I'll give you a clue. It applies
Storage.
today.
Storage when the sun doesn't shine.
Okay, storage is a question. What's even much more common than that? What happens when it
Yeah.
snows? And anyway, so people who have photovoltaics have an answer for that. And if you're in an area where you get snow, you want somebody to ask. So anyway, those are kinds of questions. Other basics are, when did you get it? What decided you to get it? How has it been since you had it? How long has it been operating? Have you had any issues? How about the cost? How about the savings? And again, not everybody will have answers or interesting answers to all of those, but you get them talking and you listen. And then from that, you say, you know, I'd really like you to talk. When we have this program in March, I want you to focus on this and this, and you can skip the third thing. So, you know, you can be the director. All right, and Sharon, good. What sparked your initial reason to purchase an electric vehicle and install? Exactly. Okay, perfect. All righty, we're going to move on here. This is great. I really appreciate everybody thinking about this, because that's what it's going to take to make this recipe work. And what's happening here is you go through, I keep talking about the stories, and you're listening the stories, you're going over with your team, hopefully. And what you're doing really is practicing the recipe. Again, just like if you don't want to, if you can help it, you don't want to go on the Great British Baking Show? Is that what it's called? and make something for the very first time on stage. We know what happens there. It can be made for great TV, but of course it's no fun necessarily if it all goes poof. Anyway, it's not going to go poof. This is all great. You're getting your fellow congregants up there. They appreciate it because they've already done this and they get to talk about it. Fantastic. It's all good. All right. So, but this I'm trying to accentuate this also because it's fun. It's fun. All right. Again, the stories are about their personal motivation, their household experience. Okay. And now, as you're coalescing all this into a program, you want to invite the three to show up with whoever your moderator is. By the way, it could be you, it could be somebody else, but somebody's paying attention to all this, and figure out who goes first, second, third. And anyway, get a date together for a run through. You don't have to call it a rehearsal, you can call it a run through, whatever. And at that point, if you haven't already, you can make further cuts, further editorial decisions, and say, you know what? You both were talking about this. You don't have to both say that. So I'm going to pick you to do this, you to do that. All right? People getting the point here? Nod heads, thumbs up. Thank you. All righty. So now we get to the final 3 points on the 9-point recipe. And you can say this at any stage. Yes, please take, if you don't have them already, take a few pictures, very few, 3 at the most maybe, and get them to me or whoever in advance. that gives you further opportunity to be the director, the editor, and you want to keep the slides simple and again attractive, and if you can include the kids, I keep saying that. And of course, if there are numbers involved, try to make that one slide and make it don't overemphasize the detail. All right, and then day of program, woohoo! You did it, you got there. And remind your speakers again, 8 minutes. To keep it moving, keep it lively. You want them to focus on the stories that are most engaging. And you can add, if you think there's lots of time in the program, if it's for an hour and a half, you can add this on. But the most important part of the program, and I guess I should have put this into the recipe, is leave plenty of time for engagement between speaker and audience. Speaker and audience. Because if they didn't already say, they're going to have to answer the question, yeah, but what if it snows? They'll have an answer. Or, yeah, but what about my range anxiety? You talked about your range anxiety, etc. So allow plenty of time for back and forth. Any questions so far before I open this wide up? I'm going to finish the slides in a minute, then we are going to have to discuss this. I'm sorry, but I am going to, there's a test at the end here. So any questions so far? Ellen, remind me where you're at. Ellen Fetterman.
Toledo, Ohio.
Okay, Ellen.
Okay, so we have a small congregation and it's an aging congregation. It's kind of dwindling. And I can only think of one person who has an electric vehicle. There may be a few more. I don't know of anyone who has a heat pump or anyone who has solar heating. So what do you do in that case? I mean, you know, like I said, we're small.
By the way, so anybody else, I don't want to presume here, anyone else might be in this kind of or expects they might have this kind of a predicament?
Is it possible there are some people who have these things and you just don't know?
That's a good question. Brenda asked that. Back to you, Ellen.
Yeah, sure, it's possible, but I know most of the congregants, and it's possible, but I would be surprised.
Okay, Naomi.
Yeah, but if you're an aging congregation, there are undoubtedly children and grandchildren around someplace, some of whom may have adopted some of this. So you might want to spread out a little bit and see if you can get somebody's kid who everybody remembers their bas mitzvah talking about how she and her husband put solar panels on their roof. I don't know, you know, I don't know the area, I don't know the congregation.
Okay, Naomi, I don't think you and I know each other, right?
No, we don't.
But I love you.
I may have seen you at some sort of meeting, but.
I love that answer. Thank you so much. That is wonderful. It's so great to do this with a good group of people. Ellen, does that do anything for you, maybe? Cool. Ellen is nodding her head vociferously.
Thank you, Fred.
Thank you, Naomi. Okay, I love it. I love it. So a fallback, if all else fails, of course, you don't have to limit yourself just to members. You might know other people around. And look, we started out with, what do you need to do to go get permission? So when you talk to the rabbi in particular, and maybe other members, other leadership, maybe they don't care so much about the technology, about the climate, about, all this stuff that you care a lot about, but you say, blah, 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 blah. New members, blah, 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 blah. And they might say, wait, what? What do you mean new members? So I always, when I do have this conversation with the rabbi, I say, it's just a question for you to consider. Would you imagine that if you do whatever it is in the direction of decarbonizing, you, the congregation, do you imagine it would attract more members or attract fewer members? So there's an idea. I'm just putting it out there. Other thoughts, other questions?
Can I also toss out an idea? It's Ellen Fine. We have a pretty good interfaith community in my community. And so I was just thinking that if you have a an interfaith clergy group. You know, this is an area where people can come together, you know, caring for the earth and the environment. So it might be something where, you know, there might be a local priest or minister or imam who, you know, who has people in their congregation, and it could be an opportunity for the two, you know,
Nice.
an interfaith dialogue on these issues with a
Absolutely.
spiritual bent as well.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
to create
That is-
unity
that-
rather than division.
Oh, absolutely. There's no reason why this can't be. And, you know, so at the heart of this this particular organizing process is community, We're thinking of our congregation or our organization as with community members in it. And sure, you can define a community a number of ways, and an interfaith is fantastic. And Phyllis chimes in with, or an interfaith non-clergy group. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So great. So good ideas. And let me finish up with the slides, and we're going to do a little more schmoozing. So I do request that you assess, that you include in your recipe, don't forget to do an assessment afterwards, internally, certainly, and then come back and report to JCAN that you're doing it. Actually, we'd love to hear that you put it on the calendar to begin with, but certainly come back and report. We'd love to hear about it. It's an interesting, we are a decentralized network in that each community obviously does its own thing, but a downside of that is that we work in silos. So it's so valuable to come together like this, dropping the silos for at least the time that we spend in this kind of a workshop. Anyway, so we can report to others. If we can report to others progress, it's really, really helpful.
Fred,
So, yes.
do you recommend that the group has a target number, whether it's fixed number of people or a percentage of their households that they're aiming to make a change as a result of this?
Yeah, no, great question. So Naomi, we have a program here in Massachusetts, which I'm not going to accentuate here in this group because this is national, but anybody can check out this portal. It's called Mass Energize. Look at it, look for it online, Mass Energize. It is a perfect portal to get at what you're talking about, Naomi, an opportunity, a way for all members of your community to report through this portal to the community, to each other, what they've done, what they haven't done, what they want to do. It's a great educational tool, and it's a great tracking tool, and it's a great organizing tool. JCAN does offer whole workshops in this. We hope to do a program, I'm thinking in April, probably, just on Mass Energize. Naomi, go ahead.
All right, we're talking here about one program, and my question is about follow-up.
Right.
How do you follow up with the people in your organization?
Right.
How many meetings should you schedule on this or on specific aspects of it?
So
Because just one meeting is going to drop and be forgotten in 2 months. So what's your follow-up process?
Good. So I'm going to show you a slide in a minute about other JCAN programs, but for congregants, this is super, super, super powerful. You can't hit people with this particular program every month, but you certainly could do it once a year. Get a different set of 3 actors up there, get a different set, changing audience in there, change up what they're presenting. You could do it every other year. It wouldn't hurt. So watch what happens here. Again, these are your co-congregants. This is what we call those balloons. Maybe this is their concern. What do you call it when you have concern, but it's all over the place? What's that word? Undifferentiated concern. Anybody help me with that?
That'll do.
Anxiety.
Yeah, anxiety. That's a good one. All right. They're concerned. Their anxiety. So they show up. They're going to show up at your program, and they show up. They know they're concerned. They're not quite clear about what they can and should do. And here you are, you lay it out for them. You've got these 3 decarbonizers painting their own pictures. And this is what you're doing. You're moving people from the, I'm still scratching my head, I don't know what to do, to being an if not an innovator, then an early adopter. This is what you're doing. You're moving people along the line. We tend to think in absolutes. Humans are not absolute. We do make these steps eventually, sooner or later. You know, yesterday I didn't drive an electric car, today I do. That's a change. That happens one time. Well, hopefully one time. That's the specifics. But people's minds, before to get up there, you want to move them along from where they are to where they need to be. And peer-to-peer is super helpful. Because the people in the audience, your co-congregants, listening to this program, this is what they end up thinking. Wait, did she just say that they made money? Right, that's going through people's heads as they're listening to their fellow congregants. The next person says, whoa, that looks easy enough. The next person says, our whatever, roof or car or heating system, whatever, needs replacing anyway. And bottom line, if they could do it, we can too. Bottom line, that is peer-to-peer influencing. It is not top-down. It only happens by you getting your co-congregants talking and other people listening. That is the most effective way we've seen for change to happen at this period. It's no longer that we need the solar expert to come in and teach us. People can go, there's a zillion resources out there to learn from top down. We need side to side influence. This is the effect. And those quotations are actual quotations from real programs that have been run. And I'm sorry, whoever was just asking just a minute ago, what's the follow-up? You want to hear those responses. You want to hear those responses, and you want to jot those down, and you can use them for further publicity. Susan, go ahead. I'm sorry.
My congregation's in the city. So, and we just did a renovation, and I think the
By
heat
city,
pump didn't work.
I'm sorry, by city, you mean?
New York City.
Okay.
So the 3 options are really big ticket items. And except for the car, which many people in the city don't have. So what are other, ways to address this? If you're not renovating your building and you're not putting solar panels on a building.
Perfect. Okay.
And you
Susan,
don't have a car.
this is great. And I'm sorry to everyone in advance because Rebecca Haller, you know her? Anyway, she's a Hazon organizer. So she and I in the last 2 weeks have been going back and forth on this exact question. So I was born in Manhattan. I've lived most of my life in Massachusetts, but I'm very proud to say in some way I'm a New Yorker. Because, okay, oh wait. Okay, here's the test, folks. Everybody's still listening. And Susan, we're getting to address your question. Which, if you had to pick among the 50 states in the United States of America, which state, statewide, has the lowest per person carbon footprint? The lowest per person carbon footprint. Which state has the lowest per person carbon footprint? Anybody want to take a stab? Steve, are you raising your hand for a guess?
No, for something else.
Okay, we'll get to it. Don't let me miss that. This is the test, folks. It wasn't in the material, I know. Hinda, where are you?
I'm in Oak Park, Illinois, but I think Vermont has a lower carbon footprint.
Great guess. Next guess.
I'd guess New York.
Steve, did I make it too easy?
What?
Okay, why? And Susan, we're getting back to your question. Why is New York State, the whole state's a monstrous state, but why is New York State have that distinction of the lowest per person average carbon footprint of any of the states?
Well, so few people have cars.
Well, no, we're talking New York State.
No, but I mean, look how big New York City is as a part of New York State.
That is the answer. That is the answer. New Yorkers, which often means New York City folks, are, I'm sorry, Vancouver. Vancouver, I said before, is too cool for school, but in these United States, it's New York State that has the distinction of lowest carbon footprint because of super cool New Yorkers who tend to not have cars. They tend to ride in the subway. They tend to not own their own single family detached home, and they tend to live in multifamily housing.
Steve,
so-
there's one other factor that affects New York statewide. And New York is not the only state where this would apply, but it's relatively few. 50% of the default electric supply in New York State is from non-carbon sources.
Right. So some states have made most states have made significant progress, but a state like New York, our state in Massachusetts, has made 30% or more improvement in the last 10 years or so in terms of greening electricity. Electricity is so much cleaner and greener. Okay, so anyway, Susan, I go back to my original, something I said early on, which is this is not a democratic process. Where the large carbon footprints are is not distributed evenly amongst all American households, all North American households, not at all. New Yorkers are cool. And I mean that like in a green way. That's really awesome. And we should, as a community, as a national, international community, acknowledge that, appreciate that. Paris, France, huge leader in low carbon footprint. New York City, huge leader. And so it also, for the purpose of this program, I would go back to, and not to pick on you, Susan, but in your congregation, are there people who live in single family detached homes or actually still drive cars?
Yes.
And unfortunately, not to, eventually this may look harsh, but right now we don't need it to look harsh, but that's where the effort is needed. That is where the effort is needed. It's not in, can I, super cool New Yorker, if I was, which I'm not, but if I was a super cool New Yorker, I don't have a car, I live in an apartment, my carbon footprint is already low. I could keep beating myself up to decrease that further and further, but we, as you're all now more aware of carbon footprint, can I do this on screen here? So anyway, so if this is the average American carbon footprint and the New Yorkers is this or something like that, you could keep lowering that, but it would be much more effective to get some of your co-congregants to do this and this, make those huge steps. That's why I keep saying, don't keep beating up those people who have the low carbon footprints, but do enlist them to help organize the others, to get the others to get to the point of change. So now I have, what have I got on the screen here? I'm sorry, I'm looking at all of you, so I can't see the screen anymore. So I'll take the screen down in a second. So please be in touch. These are the other programs that JCAN has going on this week. The program you just attended was all about organizing for your congregants, the members of your community. We have two other programs that that have to do with your carbon footprint of your shul, of your facility, of your synagogue or your other community building. That one is called benchmark. I mean, those two are benchmarking. I highly recommend that. And setting climate goals for your synagogue. They all work together, but those are two separate programs. So I encourage those. And if you would like to make a donation, jewishclimate.org/donate, much appreciated. And I think I will take down the screen so we can schmooze a little bit more. Thank you very much for your patience with all that. Stop the sharing. There we go. Everybody can see everybody now. Okay, now I'm trying to catch up quickly to the chats. Paul, you've got an interesting program going on. Tell everybody where that's at.
Okay, Catherine Hayhoe
Right.
is a climate scientist in Texas who is an evangelical Christian.
Right.
Okay, and we explored inviting her to speak. This will be for Evolution Shabbat, so it will be at services on February 11th and 12th over Zoom, and discovered that everything she would say has already been uploaded to YouTube. So we're going to present it from her pre-recorded YouTube videos. And the main thing she'll be doing is speaking about how to talk with people who are climate deniers.
I'm sorry, Paul, did you finish your statement? How to talk to people who are climate deniers?
I was finished.
Okay, thank you. And Paul, where's your congregation again?
Elmira, New York.
Right. Okay. So super cool. People should hear Catherine Cahill, whether you go to the program or not. And listen, I will just put in a kibitz here that what 2 years ago was called climate denial has evolved. So that phrase, I'm not saying it's passé, but climate denial is much more difficult to put a finger on, much more less straightforward to combat. It's out there, but it's evolved and it's pernicious in its current form. Steve, you were going to say something a while ago.
Well, I wanted to ask a question about the heat pumps and ask about I'm going to use the expression return on investment, but it's really carbon diminution versus investment and how that compares to the electric vehicle. And it may be a very difficult question to answer and quantize. And even with electric vehicles, if you're in an area where the electricity is provided by coal, then actually having an internal combustion engine is more effective in reducing the carbon than having an electric vehicle. So it's a very complicated question to answer, but if you can take a stab at it, I'd be interested.
Good. Well, I'm glad you brought it up. And for the purposes of this program, especially, I should be emphasizing this all through, but here's a non-answer, a sideways answer that I hope will be very, very helpful. Steve's answer question is, of course, in some way academic, in some way it's perfectly valid, but in another way, it doesn't matter for the following reason. What you want to effect, how you want people to change is not to drive their existing internal combustion engine car into the river or junk heap at all. You want the next time they have to buy a car, by the way, some people, this might be their last car, who knows? Anyway, if they have to buy a new car or even a used car, Ellen, more power to you. When you have to buy a car, make it electric. We're not as a general rule, we're not talking about junking equipment that works now. Same for your heating system. If your heating system is starting to need work and or replacement, or significant work and or replacement, and all heating systems have a lifetime, that's when absolutely to go heat pump. And even if the economics don't quite work wonders for you, it's a wonderful thing to do, not just to save the planet, but because the day after or the year or the 5 years after you put it in, carbon pricing, my goodness, might actually come around. And what would have seen a close to good payoff, but maybe not quite a payoff, will suddenly seem like the most brilliant investment in the universe. So there's a sideways answer for you, Steve. When it comes time to replacement, that's what you're aiming for. That's what you want to advocate for. Of course, roofs are ready to go if they're good roofs anytime and every time they will start generating their positive benefits the day they go up.
Well, I'm not thinking about return on investment dollar-wise. I'm thinking about if I have a choice between spending, this $10,000 on an electric vehicle or this $10,000 on a heat pump, where do I get the best return in terms of reducing the carbon?
Right.
That's the question.
Okay, good question. So There is a if you notice step number 9, I said, if you want to add to your program when you do the decarbonizers, include a calculate your carbon footprint. Well, that's what you want to do. And by the way, we're not going to have time to go into that now, of course, but I would recommend the EPA household carbon footprint calculator, household carbon footprint calculator. It's not perfect. It has a significant, anyway, EPA says they're going to be upgrading it in the next 5 months now. I've been nudging them, but even as it is, it's pretty good. So there's a quick answer for you. Sharon has been waiting.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Steve. Sharon.
Well, I have 2 questions. One, will this be available as an archive program?
So what you can do, I would recommend, I'll put in this chat again, is jot down my email and email me with any particular questions, especially like you can say, Fred, I didn't write down the recipe. Send me the recipe again. So wait, how do I do this?
Okay. Okay, I just wanted to share it with my Dianu circle, but I wrote down the recipe. Okay,
good.
and then
And
the
by the way,
second-
by the way, that even though you attended today doesn't mean it's a walk in the park. You're welcome to have me attend a meeting if you'd like.
Oh, well, great. Thank you, Fred. Okay. And then the second thing is just it puts you a little bit on the spot, but what has been kind of the record of these programs? Like, can you say a certain amount of congregants were persuaded and installed, solar or whatever? Do
Right.
you have any hard facts?
No, and good question. And it would be great to be able to chart that, but I do know that in the month after these presentations, if you're the organizer or on the organizing committee, you will get comments from people saying, light bulbs will go off, thresholds, obstacles will be lowered if not dropped. People will say, oh, I get it. And some people will say, I've heard these exact words. We've had a roof, I've been thinking about it for years, and here's one of my classics. And the co-congregant in this case, who went up there and talked about solar, the whole congregation had just helped him celebrate his 90th birthday. And he was the guy who went up there and said, we went solar. He went through what he did. And anyway, people afterwards say, hey, if Harvey could do it, he's 90. Why can't we? And it really is that simple. And I'm sorry, it would be great to have statistics. You do have to go back to your board and your rabbi and say, JCAN said is the single most important program for us to do this year. Other questions?
Fred, it's Mimi. I'm sorry I don't have my video on. I have 2 quick questions. One is, so you're urging us to do a one-off program and not have to be nudging people all year. Okay, great. That's wonderful. Second question, I'm like the head of my climate action team for my temple, and I'm so embarrassed because I have never even really heard the term heat pump before, and I don't even know what is a heat pump by itself a good thing for the climate, or are there good ones? Are there bad ones? How could I don't even know what term to use.
Great, Mimi, this is great. Thank you so much for asking. And I'm sorry it's late in the program. So I appreciate the question. And where are you at again, geographically?
I'm in Cleveland, Ohio.
Perfect, perfect.
I'm in a little wonderful Reconstructionist congregation in Cleveland, Ohio.
All right. So as the grid greens, the grid has to green. It has already greened. It will continue to green. It has to green even more faster than it has. All right. Anyway, and it's different levels of green in different areas, but heating with electricity with a heat pump, that's what that is. A heat pump is an electric device. And by the way, your refrigerator, just to demystify, your refrigerator is a heat pump. Your air conditioners are heat pumps. They just move heat from one place to another. There's much more to understand about that if you want, but if that's all you want to know, that's good enough. They don't burn gas or oil to heat your house, at the location. That's the big difference. You are decarbonizing. You're taking the coal. I'm sorry, not coal. Hopefully you're not burning coal for your home, but our homes used to anyway. But the oil or gas that we burn today it would be out of the equation. That's the idea. And as the grid continues to green, however green that your heating becomes when you go to heat pump, it will get greener and greener and greener as the grid gets greener, or to the extent that you've got a direct solar on your roof powering. So there's a quick answer for you.
So it's electric. It's electrically done.
That is the point. And
So Fred, my
maybe
parents
that's a-
went,
and I just want to throw in one more factoid. Again, we don't have time for it to be a quiz question, but the quiz question would go, what is the state of the 50 states, which is the state that is furthest along in implementation of air source heat pumps, air source heat pumps?
Alaska.
Hey, good question. And good answer. That could be the case. I don't think so.
Oh, no.
I don't think so. I think it's Maine. State of Maine has had incredibly lucrative and helpful incentives to move that market along of all
Fred,
states.
can I ask you a question? Back in the 70s, my parents got rid of their oil heat and went all electric because of the oil crisis, if you remember that. Does that count in this sense?
So the right answer is probably Oigevalt. Brenda?
Yeah, Oigevalt for the amount that she pays in her electric bill every month.
Well, yeah. So, but the Oigevalt, the reason Fred says that is because it's possible. There's two entirely different technologies when you say electric heating. One is
Yes.
what I was just describing, they're just state of the art, which is what Maine is pushing. Alaska may be, I don't know, is heat pumps. That it is all electric. It is highly efficient. The other kind is what we call is the old kind, which is called resistance heating, which is the least efficient, unfortunately, and highest carbon footprint, or among the highest.
I would have to imagine, since she put it in the 70s, she probably has that one.
And I'm sorry, did you say already where that is? What geographically?
In Connecticut?
Yep. So it's possible it's an older form of heat pump. If it is, it should be looked at to be upgraded. The differences between old heat pumps and modern heat pumps is huge. But if it's resistance heat, it is, talk about paybacks, it'll be a fantastic payback to change over. The utility companies in Connecticut should help anybody think this through. So there's some quick statements for you.
Fred, maybe you could locate a YouTube that you could send out to people that is a good instructional on heat pumps.
Yeah, there's a zillion. So JCAN used to be, we're about 8 years old now. We used to be in the business, or consider it part of our business, to do that kind of ground level educating, which I appreciate is helpful and important. There are so many others that can and should do a better job than we could possibly keep up with. If we posted something today, it would be out of date tomorrow. You know, it's that kind of thing. So we don't pretend to be. We work, by the way, and I recommend this wherever you're at. Find your local interfaith power and light organization. Reach out to them from your congregation to them. They work with all houses of worship. The one in Massachusetts is very strong. The one in the DC area is very strong. It's not all are as strong as the others, but reach out and see what happens. Indiana is very strong, I know. Any other good questions? You all have such great questions. I love it. And by the way, if you really want to catch this again, we're doing it again this very program on Friday. I'm sure it'll be a different cast of characters with different
Fred,
questions.
can I ask a question?
Hopefully I'll come up with not too many different answers to the same questions. Yes.
Can you see me? It's
Ellen, go for it.
Yeah, so as we speak, a big McMansion is being built next door, and there was another big one built on the other side, with roofs going in that will not permit solar. And I'm just kind of wondering if there's any kind of movement out there to, maybe either legislatively or financially incentive-wise, so that new construction has solar, in any state, because, I see these two opportunities as just, literally a crying shame, because.
Agreed. So thank you, Ellen, for bringing that up, and thank you everybody for still being here to hear these great questions. I'll try to give the best answer I can. If we had plenty of time, I'd ask for other people to pipe in, but here's my quick answer. Building code, the energy part of a building code. Building codes have made great strides, and there's a great slide that I hope you've seen, is that the new buildings built according to code there's a step curve that you see over the years. In other words, new buildings have become much more efficient than they were years ago because the code requires them to be. Their next version in Massachusetts of building code is the first draft is supposed to be out any day 2 months ago. We're still awaiting it. So Ellen, you're a great organizer, and I hope you're going to be in the pitch. Is that the right term? In the pitch as the draft is brought out and the various factions weigh in about whether it's good enough. There was talk about it being called, the next version of the building code, the net zero building code. The net zero building code. There's a lot of pushback even on the terminology, but you can imagine that if that's at least in the discussion, it should be a significant, I mean, it absolutely, everybody agrees it will be a very significant step forward. Every state should be pushing on building codes strongly, but in any case, no matter what happens, and I hear the heartache that you see out the window there, Ellen, and I'm sure everybody feels.
I mean, and the other
same.
part of the equation is that each one of these houses is anywhere from 2 to 5 times bigger than the existing house that was there that was perfectly good and should not have been torn down. So, and then it's trucking in all of that stuff. Is that figured into the carbon footprint of a new building? Is, trucking the equipment, the wood from
Right.
Vancouver?
So now we're verging into a topic called embodied energy, which is also a great topic. All these things are great topics for whole webinars into themselves. But yes, when you build a new building, especially if one building material if you have a choice of 2 different building materials and one it takes a lot of carbon to build or provide that material, and the alternative is much less carbon to build it. That's what you call embodied carbon, what it takes to put carbon. Yes, and so NESE, those in the Northeast, there's I'm a longtime member of NESE, Northeast Sustainable Energy Association. I encourage people to check it out if they want. It tends to be where the professionals are discussing these things every year. I'm on that committee this year, putting the program together. It comes up February 28th, March 1st. Anyway, if you want to see what's going on there, it's a significant professional conference, but that's where this stuff, and anyway, I say that because Ellen, embodied energy has been foremost and center for the last 3 years at that conference. And today at this conference, there's going to be 40 sessions. I think 10 of them probably have embodied energy just in the title. So anyway, so sorry for that. It's not a tangent, it's a good thing. Any other good question? I mean, all questions are good. You're all asking good questions. You're all very patient. I hope it's been fun and interesting for you. More, Yasher Koach, for everything you're doing, folks. I do encourage you, please get back to me, get back to JCAN as soon as you hit your roadblock. You will go to your board, your rabbi, your whomever, and they will say, huh, what? We can't do that. And let us know. If you'd like to, we can help. Again, we work in silos. Everybody has hit those roadblocks. Let's work togetger. Thanks, everybody. Really appreciate it. Enjoy the
That's
fest.
awesome.
Thank you so much.
you.
Excellent.
Thanks, everyone.
Fred, tell me again, what's the magic word for the kind of electric heat pump I want to ask if they have?
What
It's
kind
not
of heat pump?
radiant. It's
What
not
kind?
radiant. It's called what?
Exactly. It's either radiant or heat pump.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Radiant, think of a toaster. A toaster works on radiant. I'm sorry. It's not, forget radiant. Sorry. Resistance is the right word. Resistance electric is the
Okay,
wrong,
great.
the old. That's what a toaster works on. It gets red hot. That's how it heats. So resistance heat, no good. Heat pump, yes, good.
Oh, okay, perfect.
Okay,
Thank you.
Naomi. Okay, Thank you, everybody.